everybody and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be doing a do's and don'ts video for drawing hair because I got so much great feedback about the one I did for eyes, but a lot of you guys really wanted to see one for hair, so that's what I'm doing in today's video. And the first common mistake that a lot of beginners make when they're drawing hair is they do a really harsh dark outline and they outline the shape of the hair and they don't put in any of the individual locks and the main waves and clumps of the hair. They just do this outline shape and then they go in and try to fill it in. The next common mistake is they tend to just go in with a really dark pencil right at the start rather than building up the layers. They just want to go in and put in all those darkest areas and they press really hard on a dark pencil, and this can be done in a very back and forth motion which leads to having stop and start points. And now I'm going in with a lighter pencil and I'm using this to fill in all the midtones, and again I'm making that same mistake of just using back and forth motions. And this leaves you with having really harsh highlight points. So you can see there's just strips where I haven't done any shading. And this is what you'll get if you just do start and stop points that start at the same place and finish at the same place. So once you've put in your shadows and your midtones, you might want to blend it out. And the mistake here is that I'm using my finger. And when you use a finger to blend, your fingers have a lot of oil on them. And this oil residue will get the paper greasy and it might make your shading uneven and you'll have more grease in certain areas. So it might not be smooth all the way around. And this can cause archival problems as well if you just have lots of grease and oil on the paper. So what I recommend instead is using a tissue or cotton bud to blend. So now I'm going in and adding even more shadows, and the problem here was that I'm kind of outlining all of the different clumps of hair and putting a very solid outline around all of the clumps, which means it doesn't look very natural or realistic. So you want to make it have gradiated changes and look very seamless transitions between the clumps. And another common mistake people do is they try to draw in all the strands, and if you try and draw in all the strands it can look very wiry. So as you can see here, there will be flyaway hairs to a lot of different hairstyles, but if you do them thick and just lines like this without much motion and they all kind of look the same darkness, there's no real depth there, then it will look very unrealistic. So the next thing you might want to do is add highlights, and the common mistake is using too big of an eraser. So if you want to add highlights, you can use a kneaded eraser to get really fine points, or you can cut down your large eraser to get a really small edge. So those are all the common mistakes that I see beginners make when they're trying to draw hair, and now I'm going to show you how I'd improve those and prevent them and how I like to draw realistic hair. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do when I'm drawing hair is I like to sketch out the main waves, motion and clumps of the hair. So as you can see, I'm doing a very light sketch and I'm using a H pencil, which means that it's really light, and I'm just doing this to get a feel for the motion of the hair and the individual clumps. And then I'm going in with a slightly darker pencil, so this was a B pencil, and I'm using this to start shading in where the shadows are going to be, and I'm leaving certain areas for the highlights. But as you can see, I'm slowly gradiating between the shadows into the highlights. I'm not just leaving patches where the highlights will be. And I'm doing this in motions of lines rather than circular motions that I do normally. I'm just using lines that flow with the direction that the hair is going in. And when you are drawing your lines, make sure that they do have motion and they're not just stiff and uniformed. Make sure they flow with the motion of the hair and the direction that the hair is going in. Okay, so next thing that I'm doing is I am going in with that dark pencil that I used before, but I'm using it a lot lighter, and I made sure that I sharpened it this time because that means that I can get individual hairs rather than just sections of dark patches. So I'm blocking in those main shadowed areas, but I'm not going as dark as I will be going. I'm just slowly building up those layers, and I will darken it up later, but I'm just getting a plan of where the shadows are and where the highlights are going to be. And as you can see, already it looks so much better than the other hair drawing that I did. Okay, so I keep building up those shadows and those midtones, and I make sure that I'm going with the direction of the hair. And what I'm doing differently here is I'm only working on the top half of the hair. Because hair is such a large mass that you've got to draw, there's got lots of different areas that you need to focus on. It's important that you break it down in sections rather than just doing it all in one go and doing the whole thing. It will be a bit overwhelming. You should really just focus on certain sections, break it down, and then move on and work to the next section. So once I blocked in all the shadows and the midtones, I went in and I blended it out, just like I did before, but instead of using my finger to blend it out, I used a tissue. And I love using tissues to blend out my graphite pencil because it creates such a smooth blending transition without getting all greased down on the paper, and it's really nice at getting those soft gradiated looks. So once I blended it out, as you can see, you lose a lot of the different lines that you drew. You can't really see them as much, they're just blended out, but you can still see where the basic midtones and shadows are in the hair. So now I'm going in and I'm redefining each of the locks of hair. I'm adding in some more shadow and I'm using some more midtone colours as well. So I'm using the B pencil and I'm using that really dark pencil to create the shadows. And now when I blend it in, I don't want to get rid of all the lines that I've drawn because this adds a lot of realism to the hair, so I'm using the stump to lightly shade it out this time so that it creates a softer look, but it doesn't get rid of all the lines that you drew and all the individual motion of the hair. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm establishing some highlights and just pulling up some of the graphite from the highlight areas. And to do this, I'm using a small eraser, and this is an eraser that I would use to put in my electric eraser, and it's really small, which means you can get a lot of detail. And also I'm varying my types of pressure as well, so I'm just lightly pulling up some graphite from some areas, and then in other areas where it was more of a harsh highlight, I'm using a bit more pressure on that eraser to pull up even more of the graphite. So it's really important when you're doing hair that you vary your shadows and vary your highlights as well, because you don't want it all to look uniformed, otherwise it will look too structured. You want it to have a lot of flow to it, and hair is very free flowing and can be quite random as well. So again, I'm just working in layers, and I'm going to go back in with that really dark pencil and just deepen up the shadows. And now I've finished with the top half for now, but I will be going back in and adding some more shadows and adding some details and stuff later on. But for now I want to work on the bottom half and get it all blocked in, so then I know how to adjust the contrast and stuff like that. So again, I'm doing the exact same thing as I did with the top half, so I'm just going in with that really light pencil and adding in the midtones, and then I'm going in with that dark pencil and establishing the shadows. And I just keep building these up, and as you can see, when I'm adding layers I get a lot more depth, and I'm slowly building it up rather than just applying a lot of pressure onto the pencil. And this will help you avoid the shine as well. You won't get as much shine if you don't press really hard. So there is a variety of ways you can draw hair. It's just trying to avoid the main common things that can make it look unrealistic. This isn't just the one way you can make your hair look realistic. There is lots of different types of ways. But this video is just for people that are trying to draw hair, not liking the results that they're getting, and they don't know why. So this is just a few common mistakes that I see a lot of people do to make their work look unrealistic. And this video is just if you're trying to go for realism. If you're not, then there's lots of different ways you can do it, but this is if you want to do photorealistic hair. And this time I worked on the bottom right half and blended it out, and then I worked on the left half, and then I'm going to blend that out as well. So as you can see, I'm working in clumps of hair. I'm not drawing loads of individual strands of hair. I'm just working and focusing on each clump, and this is what makes it look realistic, because your hair, when you look at hair, you don't just see all these different strands of hair. You see it in terms of clumps, which is important to replicate if you want to do realistic hair. So now that I blended out both of the bottom sides, I'm going in with that eraser again and I'm pulling out the highlights. So now that I've done the whole of the hair and blocked that in, I'm going in and adding some more details. So I'm looking at the contrast and look where I need to darken up the shadows, where I need to pull out more highlights, and then I try to transition from the highlights into the shadows a bit more. And I really like using the stump to transition from the highlights into the shadows as well. I think that's a really good tool to try and transition between that gap where it's really shadowed and then really, really bright. So once I've blocked it all in, I just look at the different areas, add the details, and I look at my reference photo. It's important to look at your reference photo and not just draw the hair the same every time you do it. Really look at your reference photo and try to replicate that. Don't just get into the habit of doing the same sort of hair every time. You've got to adapt to your reference photo and look individually where the shadows are on your reference photo and where the highlights are. One really good thing about graphite drawing is that you don't need really expensive materials to make realistic drawings. So as long as you have a few different gradations of pencils, so say a really light one, say a 2H or a H, and then a B or a 2B, and then I had a Kimberly 9XXB, which was the really dark pencil. And this was really good because it allowed me to go really dark, but it doesn't give off any shine whatsoever. So it's really good for that reason. And charcoal is really good as well if you don't want to have any shine in your work. So I prefer to use charcoal than I do with graphite because I think the shine that you get with graphite drawing really takes away from the realism. So I'm just going through the hair, adding in the highlights, touching up the shadows, and that's really all I did to make this look realistic. So you can see a few little changes to how you use your technique to draw hair can really create a big difference in the final outcome. So it's really important to make sure that you use clean lines and just build it up slowly. Don't just try and do blocks of hair with back and forth motions because it won't look realistic. Make sure that you use a smaller razor to do your highlights rather than a big fat chunky one. And also make sure that when you're doing your blending, try to use tissues or cotton buds and stuff like that to avoid getting grease onto your work. So that's it for today's video. I really hope you found it useful and found some tips in there that help you improve your drawings. If you're new to my channel and you like this video, I'll be doing a lot more do's and don'ts videos, and I do a lot of tutorials as well on my channel, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on them. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll leave links to my social media sites in the description below. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any other tips and tricks for drawing hair, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!